there's just this whole interrelationship that's important to me to foster, me with the animals and the plants, eaters, chefs, growers, and how we all weave together and enjoy each other's part of the process.
Hello, this is Joey Chandler, and welcome to the Love Launch Podcast. This is where I talk to experts, entertainers, and entrepreneurs and everyday people about what love means to them and how we all can have more of it in our lives. Today, I'm excited because this is not an everyday guest. I got a call from this person who is a business owner, a podcaster, and a farmer. And she said, I want to talk to you about love and farming. And I thought for a moment and I said, well, what does love have to do with farming? But she was really passionate about it. And I said, okay, Missy Singer Dumars, you have to come on. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's my great honor to have you here. As I said, Missy does a lot of things, but Missy, why don't you just take a moment and introduce yourself to our listeners and just let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah, so my name's Missy Singer Dumars. I have a beautiful old historic 13-acre farm just outside of Buffalo, New York, up on a hill where I can see Lake Erie and the sunset every day. And I've been here about 5.5 years. And I raise chickens, ducks, and geese for eggs. I grow all kinds of heirloom vegetables. I raise sheep for wool that I hand dye with my own grown plant materials and sell as yarn. And we do all kinds of events and food education and food advocacy here at my farm. And I'm also a business coach and have been for well over a decade. That's the shortest summary I can give you.
Wow.
I've done a lot of other things. I mean, I've been a massage therapist. I worked in entertainment, theatrical lighting for many, many years. There's a whole back history, of course, but that's the current story.
Okay, well, I can't wait to get into all of that. But first, please tell us, what does love mean to you?
Oh my gosh. I have been thinking about this question since I knew we had this podcast coming up, this interview coming up. And I think what's it mean to me? I would say it means connection in one word. When I think about trying to define what love is, that's much harder. And that's why there's centuries worth of poets and artists and musicians and whatnot trying to describe love in metaphor and imagery and all kinds of things, because it's such a it's like an indescribable thing that we all know exactly what it is somehow.
That's actually the whole point of the podcast, because I'm finding, just like you said, love is one of those things that we all talk about, but we don't really talk about what it means to us personally.
Yeah, I think for me, it comes to connection, and then what actions connection then leads to, or what way of being connection then leads to.
Okay, great. So love for you is about connection. Then my next question is, how does that love and that connection show up for you in terms of being a farmer?
Well, first of all, I'd say you cannot be a farmer if you don't absolutely love it, because it is really hard. And you have to have a certain commitment or love or both to keep getting up every morning and doing the hard stuff every day. However, for me, I feel like besides loving what I do, I bring a lot of mindfulness and love and care to every living being. And I have a hyper awareness to all the lives that are under my care. And for me, the best way that I can care about them is to have a lot of love for them. Every plant, every seedling. I mean, I talk to them. I sing songs and say prayers. I give a lot of love to every animal. I go very far out of my way to give them the best care I can. And I wouldn't do that if I didn't love them.
So what I'm hearing is that love is also about care for you.
Care is an expression, one expression of love. And I would say I'm certainly an acts of service kind of gal in a lot of ways, and quality time. And those are probably the two things I give every living being on this farm is a lot of my time and a lot of my service.
Yeah, the whole idea of what we're doing here is really just exploring all the different expressions of what love is to different people. And I think one of the challenges for us is to figure out what that is for us so that we can really own it. But I have to ask, running a farm, I've never done it, but it sounds like an awful lot of work. What do you do to stay grounded and stay true to yourself so that you can keep bringing your love to the land and to the animals every day?
Well, I mean, I think we're all innately designed as different humans, and I'm certainly innately designed with a deep caregiving side to me, naturally. Although I don't have my own children, I um, have always had a lot of nurturing and caregiving. So, you know, the days where I don't want to get up, I think about an animal being hungry or something needing tending, and I can't not get up and take care of them. Like trust me, there's plenty of mornings where I don't want to get out of bed, um, and and there's times where I've had heartbreak from love and having someone else I have to care for is what got me out of bed and kept me moving and kept me from spiraling into depression and whatever else. So there's a part of it is that there's living things depending on me, and then those things are related to other families, neighborhood, and in the city that depend on me for food and nourishment. And I would say my top value is nourishment. One of my top values is nourishment, and so everything comes back to nourishing the relationships and the interrelationships, which
Mhm.
then goes back to connection and back to love. So there you go.
Exactly. There's always that loop. But I do want to push a little bit, just given the responsibility that you have, how do you keep yourself nourished? Because it's so easy for us to not nourish ourselves. And I'm just curious, how do you keep nourished?
I It's been a hard lesson in 5.5 years of having a farm, and I'm still learning the lesson. I mean, the important lessons are kind of lifelong learning kind of lessons. But for me, um, letting go of perfectionism is a way I take care of myself and nourish myself, like giving myself a break. Like, I'm not going to get all the things done. I'm not going to do everything exactly right. And so every day it's like reminding myself of that. Oh, this seedling died. Oh, this animal died. Oh, this thing happened. It's like you can't do everything. I didn't get as much done as I wanted. You know, learning to work with that. So to me, self-care and self-nourishment and self-love is it's not about going on a vacation or going on a spa day. It's the daily living acts. So eating really good quality food and taking care of myself in that way is important. Luckily, this beautiful old farmhouse has a very nice modern hot tub, and so I use that and I enjoy showers. I particularly in the summer, I love to be outside and do the evening chores and be out until the very last inkling of light has disappeared and enjoy the beauty. So, yeah, enjoying the beauty and the surroundings, or just sitting with one of the dogs and, watching the barnyard happen. Those things are nourishing. And so I'd say overall, the biggest way I nourish myself is to pause and appreciate what's in front of me and the natural abundance and natural beauty around me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I could just envision you out for a walk with the sunset and the green of the hills and the trees and the dogs running around. That just must be a really amazing and nourishing and fulfilling experience.
Yeah, you pretty much described it. In the summer, I mean, I've got a big wraparound porch on this old farmhouse, and so in the summer we pretty much never leave the porch. When we're relaxing, we eat dinner on the porch, we read on the porch, and it faces the sunset. Last year I built a bench up on the hill that you can watch the sunset from. So I love to just walk the property, observe the new growth, the old growth, the new things, the different things, what's happening, the shifts, the subtle shifts and changes. and be present to all that, and that's nourishing for me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Feeding other people is nourishing too. So, that generosity feedback loop of giving and then receiving.
And is that something you do? Do you have people over for your house for meals, or do you take food to other people?
There's a number, well, my customers, I have subscribers or what they call CSA. So every week or every other week when I pack that up, I think about each person as I see the signups come in at the beginning of the season. They really feel into each family and each household, and feel really honored that they've asked me to nourish and feed them. So there's that, but we also have a lot of events on the farm. So this year we have 11 farm to table dinner events, and each of those will have 40 to 50 people come enjoy a meal, working with all kinds of local chefs. Most of my customers and work is with local chefs and restaurants, and so I love to see what they create. Like, I put all this work into growing eggs or vegetables, and then to see what they then take that and create, and then to see posts from their diners who enjoy it. It's just the whole process. And I also have interns that come and go through the summer and stay here, and so we eat meals together, and I have them help serve the meals for the dinners. And I think it's really great to foster that relationship that um, well, we all eat food, but the eaters who show up to my farm get to be in a different kind of relationship with their food, which in turn is a different kind of relationship with themselves, because they're feeding themselves, they're eating, and that they get to meet the people who grow the food, and that my interns actually get to see the joy on people's faces as they take bites of what they worked so hard to create and grow, and they get to see the beauty of what various chefs do with this food that they work so hard every day to grow. So there's just this whole interrelationship that's important to me to foster, me with the animals and the plants, eaters, chefs, growers, and how we all weave together and enjoy each other's part of the process.
That sounds like such a wonderful example of a framework for a relationship where people can come together with their own individual skills and experiences and create something that's above and beyond any one person.
Yeah, it is. And what you're describing of relationship, as I've begun to learn, is through the farm and through my own relationships in life. It is that maturity of a relationship, I would say, of each, in a human to human relationship, each individual accepting themselves and each other as who they are. And then, how do we navigate and dance together and honor each other's strengths and support each other's needs and all that. And to me, that's a maturing of a relationship.
That is far easier said than done, isn't it?
Certainly. I haven't totally figured it out either.
When you figure that out, you can come back on.
I'll let you know. It might be a few lifetimes from now, but I'll try. I'll have my spirit seek yours out and let you know.
Exactly. I'll definitely be waiting for that answer. On a slightly different note, my sister's actually a farmer, and her and her husband, they developed this amazing piece of land inside of Reno, and they're actually live off the grid in Reno, and they have taken basically a very much a dirt patch, and over the past 10 years or so, created this amazingly wildly abundant piece of land that grows all sorts of different things. And one of the things that she talks about a lot is the cycles of life. And I'm wondering, since you're a relatively new farmer, it sounds like maybe 5 or 6 years, and obviously you've gone through a few of the cycles. I'm wondering if that cycles of life that you must see as a farmer, has that impacted your understanding of love at all?
I've certainly had lots of loss in my life, big and small, of both humans and other living things. Loss of a crop. I just had a baby lamb pass yesterday. And I think what I've come to discover for me is that if I wouldn't feel the loss if I didn't have the love, right? So like the two are very intertwined. It's that, when when there's a loss or a disconnection, then you realize what's missing that was there, you know what I mean? Also, living very close to the seasons and the cycles and the land and seeing life cycles happen over and over again every year, um, there's a certain coming to terms and peace with that and how natural it is. And I think even as a young person, I had a slightly different relationship with the endings of life and perhaps a very stoic perspective, but an understanding that it's a natural part of the process. Um, and so endings of things don't, I mean, there's sadness and grief for sure of what no longer is. And for me, it's I don't avoid it, you know what I mean? You know, a lot of people spend their whole life avoiding death or avoiding the end. It's I don't rush into it, but I don't avoid it. It's like that's part of what happens, and it's very matter of fact, I guess. I might have gone in a different tangent than what you asked, but
Well, you did get me thinking that we actually don't talk about marriage in terms of having cycles. We talk about marriage as in until death do us part, but it's one of the only things that I can think of that doesn't really take into account that natural cycle of life and death. And I'm wondering if that actually causes problems for us in the long run.
well, yeah, truly most uh what do you say, cultural and conventional things around human relationship and love and marriage and all that are very not natural and are really distorted. And I feel like in the ending of two important relationships or two marriages in my life, I've really come to do a lot of work of unwinding all that, you know, cultural programming and expectation. And I think all those expectations, whether it's the prince and the princess or the till death do us part or all these things, create a lot of expectations, which usually are what creates the tension.
It would be as if I wanted to be a farmer and I never wanted to have anything ever die on my farm.
Yes.
And I have actually no idea where this would go, but I'm just wondering about the idea of what a relationship would look like if it honored those natural cycles of life and death.
Yes, indeed. And I would say like this is where we get into nuance. And I strongly feel nuance is super important and often skipped over in most conversations these days. But the nuance here that you're wondering about to me is that you know, you talk about a relationship dying. I would say the nature of the relationship, what the relating currently, the current incarnation of it may die, but the relationship, the connection may not, right? So I've had many partnerships where, I mean, I'm a person who maintains close friendship with most of my significant ex relationships in my past. There's just something in me that has always felt like, well, just because we can't be in a romantic relationship anymore, why would I just write off and disconnect from this shared piece of living we've had together and that there is a connection? And so for me, going forward in seeking future relationships and looking at them, whether they're working relationships or romantic personal relationships, I'm allowing taking more time to allow a relationship to reveal to me what it wants to be. And so recognizing that there's I feel connection here, but then pausing to not superimpose an expectation of what that connection means or needs to look like, which I think is where we get into a lot of trouble. And then once we decide what it looks like right now, it's going to change. And all the long-term really long-term relationships I know, that marriages or whatnot that have lasted, um, you talk to those people and interview them or ask them about their relationship over the years, you'll hear really quickly that it's evolved and changed. And you know, there were times where they did everything together, and now there's times where they each do their own thing. Or you know, it's just you know, my dad and his hopefully I'm not revealing personal information here, but like, multiple relationships. I won't just say my dad, but multiple relationships I've seen, they may not even share a bedroom anymore, or they didn't when they first did, and now they do. I've seen both, right? So it's just like, if we can release all the expectations of what marriage looks like and what culture tells us a relationship is supposed to look like, then we can allow it to shift and evolve. And I think that kind of answers the question. And I've had many partnerships. Like I had a really strong romantic relationship many years ago, and we're still very good friends. And the romantic relationship and the deep intimacy, physical intimacy and whatnot, and the expectations that were coming with that had to end. We completely disconnected and didn't talk at all for about a year or so. And then both of us were at some gathering, and I was welcoming people, and this person showed up and lit up and gave me a huge hug. And then we reconnected as friends in a different way, and still deep care and deep love. But the relationship looks really different. And we live long distance and don't talk that often, but we just called each other the other day and had a sweet catch up. And I think finding the place where we can allow that evolution to happen. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it for sure, but I think that's the path to what you're asking.
But I'm wondering, if I wanted to maintain a relationship and really stay in a relationship or even a marriage, what could I do to honor those natural cycles without ending the relationship?
Mm. I think part of it is being present with what is, as opposed to expecting a particular future or wanting to hang on to a particular past way. And that's where the grief and the death comes from. The release is releasing what was to allow what is to unfurl into the next incarnation of how it's about how the relating happens. So the relationship, the connection is the strength and the consistency to me. And then like when a tree loses its leaves, the tree is still there and still rooted and still receiving nutrients. I let go of the leaves of this season, which actually is already in the process of dropping seeds. It's always interesting to me. Something I discovered really being a farmer is that seeds drop in fall. Like everybody talks about planting seeds in spring. And yes, if you have annual plants that you're farming, or annual vegetables that aren't perennial, you plant seeds in the spring usually. But out in nature, where there's 4 seasons at least, where I live, um, when the flower dies, it drops, the petals die off and the leaves die and the plant is done with its season. It drops its seeds into the ground in fall. That's when seeds are actually sown. And then they sit all winter, dormant or semi-dormant. And then as things start to warm up, then they send roots down first and then they come up, right? That's the natural cycle. And so the same with the trees, right? Like the trees, the acorns drop in the fall and whatnot, and then new trees may or may not grow from those. But the tree's still there. The roots are still there. The trunk, the core is still there and still growing in a slower maturing process, right? So you have different. So the core is a slower growth, and then the leaves grow fast in the spring and summer, and then fall and keep going. So it's like how it looks on the outside may evolve and change in the relationship. How the relationship physically manifests may evolve and change, and certainly there's grief at the loss of what was. Like, gosh, that initial honeymoon phase was so juicy and fun, and it's going to change and it's going to go away at some point, and it's okay to grieve that and remember it fondly, like we do when we grieve the loss of a human life, right? But then, like, what's here in its place? A different maturity. The relationship continues to mature, and then a new way of relating evolves, and it becomes sexy and fun in a different way. And I think that's what we can learn from nature about relationships.
Oh, I think that's incredibly beautiful. Of course, the real challenge is that you have to make sure that the two people in the relationship are on the same page in terms of when the cycles are starting and stopping.
Possibly, but I think I think the challenge is I mean, there's heavy cultural programming, centuries of cultural programming on what a relationship is supposed to look like or not look like. And it's very difficult to step out of that. Like, I wouldn't say I'm perfect at that either by any stretch, right? But um, at least starting to have awareness, like, is my desire what I'm told I want? Is it what I really want? Am I being present with the person as they're showing up today, or am I wanting to be someone who they aren't anymore? Because we all grow and evolve individually as well, right? And so you're going to want someone to continue to love you as you grow and evolve, and your job is to love them the same as they grow and evolve. And it may be that there's a time where one or both people grow and evolve and the paths need to part. Like my first husband and I, we got married super young. Certainly a much less mature relationship. We're still very dear friends, and it was like we grew and evolved in two different directions and had to part ways. And but there's still love and care, and um you know we talk regularly and connect regularly and share things regularly. So
Yes. I love what you said about the seeds. You said that the seeds grow the roots first.
yeah.
That's such a wonderful reminder and a metaphor for anyone who is starting a new relationship. You have to do the work to grow your own roots and to nurture yourself before you try to grow something new.
It's one of my favorite metaphors for so many things. I seriously, living close to the land and more within, and I would say, well, we always live within, whether we're aware of it or not, but living with more awareness to the natural cycles, and in more alignment with them. There's so many lessons from the natural world. Most every piece of wisdom I come to understand more deeply comes from the natural world.
You are also a business coach, and I'm curious if your experience as a farmer has impacted how you think about growing a business.
Well, for certain, the same thing. I mean, just understanding excuse me, my perspective on business is really about tending relationships, relationship to yourself, to your business, to money, to your customers, to your vendors, partners, and building relationships. And I'm more interested in building a slow, intentional business that's aligned with yourself and in relationship with your customers than, fast for the numbers kind of business. And so certainly all the same things we've been talking about apply, growing the roots of your business first before you go big. I mean, I would say now in my 6th season here on the farm, and the first couple seasons I wasn't really actively growing it as a business, but my 6th season as a farm, I'm starting to feel the leaves and the flowers pop out, and like more visibility and more above ground and more people who know who I am and who I know who they are. And, I get called for more media things, et cetera now. And just because I built a strong foundation, I took time to learn what I'm doing and to build relationships for the first 4 years with chefs and with food people in my area and all these things that now those roots are growing above ground, right? So to me, that's the lesson. And also understanding that there's, just like nature, there's phases and there's cycles, and how like with yourself and in a business and with your customers, and to understand those and how to work with them, instead of pushing through or fighting them. So those will be some quick ones.
Thank you. There's a lot of wisdom in that. But I'm curious, how did you become a farmer?
I no, I never dreamed to be a farmer, and part of my bigger personal story that I share, about becoming a farmer is I grew up, upper middle class Jewish kid, total country club kind of kid. Didn't camp, didn't you know my parents most of my childhood. My parents had landscapers. They didn't even mow the lawn or do the gardens or anything around the house, and so just no relationship to any of that. And there's a lot of little things that led me to changing my relationship to food. I went to massage school on Kauai in Hawaii and lived with a family that was living off grid, and growing food, and some of the first experiences I ever had of eating something straight from the ground that was grown with a lot of mindfulness and care, and just tasting a carrot that got pulled and rinsed off with a hose right there and eaten is just like those things blew my mind. But my most recent ex-husband had really had the dream of the farm, and through my both of our interest in health and wellness, and what choices for our own food we wanted to at least provide for ourselves. And he had more of a bigger farm vision than I did. But I've always been a hostess. I always had a dream of having a place where people can come and find care and comfort and solace in various ways. And because I've had places like that over the years that I've received so much gifts from. And so it all came together. And then when they left a year and a half into being here, I really took it on. I was like, I knew this place has a certain magic to it, this particular property, and I knew it wasn't done with me. And truly, when they first left, I needed something to focus on, and to move through my grief of that very big ending. And so I stayed here, and now I don't want anything else. I'm constantly working to make sure I can hang on here and grow old here, and trying to own a farm, and all the expense and everything, and hardship. It's a lot of work. So
Wow. So you and your husband started this farm, and then a year and a half into it, you separated and you decided to stay with the farm and keep it going.
pretty much, yeah. I mean, in the first year, they basically got it. What triggered some of it? There was obviously underlying things, but they had an incredible job offer that was like a dream job for them that required them to go back to the West Coast. And so at first the conversation was that I would stay here and they would go there. And then in the winters, we'd figure it out differently. And then they left the whole relationship. And I was like, well, I'm staying here. I mean, it was more in the moment, it was like, I don't know what else to do with myself. And this is a home, and this is my home. And they were very, stay there for now, and we'll work out the details. And so, that was already 4 years ago.
That must have taken a lot of courage for you to say, okay, I'm putting on my farmer pants here and I'm just going to stick with it and make this happen.
Yeah, well, at first it was mostly like I think I said at the beginning, it got me out of bed every day. It was like, okay, there's living beings already here that count on me, and I got to get out of bed and feed them every day, and take care of things, and that kept me moving. And people had already committed to a season of eggs, and things like that too. And so it was like, there's people counting on me, and living beings counting on me, and working soil and planting seeds. I can't even tell you how much crying I did into the gardens and the beds that year. It was a lot. How much anger I released. Shoveling snow still will get my anger going. Like, there's something about shoveling snow that in the winter that just pisses me off. Like, that is the one thing that will like really trigger my anger. When the animals are being stupid and stubborn, sometimes that will like absolutely trigger my anger, which is good. It's like, but the farm has been a place to not just receive so much nourishment and joy and beauty, which there's a ton of, but it's also been a place to release the anger and the sadness and the grief, and plant it into the soil. Mother Earth composts, not just physically but energetically and emotionally. And so to send all that energy, send all those tears, put all that right into the soil and let it compost and turn into new energy and new life, like that was vital to my grief and healing process for sure.
I did an interview recently with a amazing woman. Her name is Joyce Fields, and she has been married for over 50 years and has written 10 books. And she says that one of the things is that anger is energy, and that anger used wisely can produce amazing things. And it sounds like you've been able to channel that anger of yours to create something really incredible.
Yeah, I've always been someone who's like, all right, I've got this energy, like I can sit in it and stew, or I can like do something with it. And I'm usually a do something with it kind of person. So it's like, let's channel this into something useful or productive, or, useful and productive can be just something that feels good or is beautiful. It doesn't even have to be the modern interpretation of productive, but I certainly agree with that feeling.
Well, again, that is something far easier said than done. So, congrats on all the work that you have done to make your farm successful. We're going to start wrapping this up. And to do that, I always ask a few questions.
Okay.
First, do you have a favorite book or song or movie that just inspires love and romance for you?
Oh my gosh, there's one book I will read over and over and over again when I really want to sink into a good love story. And I can't believe I'm saying this publicly on a podcast. It's a Danielle Steele book. It's the only one I actually like. And it's Message from Nam. And it gets my heart. I've read it hundreds of times. It's a paperback that's well worn and sits on my nightstand so I can grab it anytime. I know the story backwards and forwards, but I'll cry and laugh and feel love and all the feelings every single time for sure.
And what do you love so much about that book that you have read it hundreds of times?
I it just this is a longer complex thing, but the basics are that I do a lot of personal work with a system called human design, and one of the things I've really learned about my own design is that I amplify and feel emotions through that are around me, and so I often tap into various books or movies to cry or to feel deep love or whatever those things. It's usually like outside things. And so that particular book, for whatever reason, I just fell in love with the story. There's more than one deep love within it. And I love the history of that time period in general, as someone who does love to learn about history. And so just all the things about. Uh, the 60s and early 70s and the history and story of Vietnam and the war and the United States role in it, plus this profound love story that's both a young girl's coming of age and learning who she is and what's important to her, as well as two great romances in it. Um, it hits all the things. It's all the good stuff.
Well, I applaud you for having a story like that. That's awesome. And question number two, if you could ask anyone what love means to them, who would that person be for you?
Oh my. I actually wish my nanny and poppy, my grandparents were still around. I have so many questions that I never asked about family history, their history, but also, I mean, they lived into their 90s, married for a hell of a lot of years. And I've heard stories from them over the years when they were alive about their relationship at various moments, but I would be curious to ask them that question. And interesting that that comes up because my grandmother, what would have been her 100th birthday, was just a couple days ago.
I think that would be great. It's definitely one thing that I'm learning from these conversations is that there are people around us that just have wisdom about love, and they don't need titles, they don't need to be experts. But if we can take the time to talk to them about what love means to them, there are definitely things that we can learn from just the people in our lives.
Oh, for sure. And I know there were times my grandmother, walked out or they had various arguments and, you know, thought they'd call it quits and they didn't. And, I was always curious what kept them in it with each other. And there was, you could tell even in their last days when they weren't even fully aware, there's still love.
Yes, for sure. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. And before I ask my last question, how can people get in touch with you to learn about your business coaching and to learn about your farm?
Yeah, to learn about my farm, the best is my Instagram, which is Crown Hill Farm NY for New York. Um, to be in touch with me about mentorship and coaching and that kind of thing, my website, which is spiritbiz, B-I-Z, people.com. which certainly gives you a sense of the interrelationships that I tend in business. But spiritbizpeople.com is the best way to find out more about that kind of thing. And yeah, those are probably the two best ways to find me.
Okay, great. And we'll have all of those in the show notes, of course. And lastly, what are you taking away from this conversation?
I'm actually really grateful for this conversation. It's actually been a super difficult week this week on the farm. We were lambing, and it's not been a smooth lambing, and we lost a baby lamb yesterday. That mama is not doing great. The other two twins of that triplet are a little shaky, and so it's been a really challenging week. I've been exhausted, and so just to step out and have this conversation with you and remember why I love what I do, and remember the connections. I feel lighter personally. I think that's what I'm taking away. It was. I think I said to you before we started recording that I wasn't sure that it was the right thing to do this interview today because I have so much on my plate, and yet I knew because of all the challenges happening this week, this was a super important conversation to have right now. And so I feel lightened, and I feel my heart cracked open and reconnected to what's important to me and what I love about this. And so I think that's what I'm taking away from this conversation. So thank you so much for lightening my week and bringing joy back to what I do.
Oh, thank you. That makes me so happy. And what I'm taking away from this is this idea of bringing the cycles of life to the relationship. How can we better honor the ups and downs and plan for those ups and downs and celebrate them? And, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to really work, but I really do think that's an interesting question. So thank you for that.
Certainly. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're welcome as well. To the listeners, I want to say thank you. I strongly invite you to take the time to think about what love means to you. It's the reason why we do this podcast, because I say the more that we can explore what love means to each of us, the greater the chance we all have of having it in our lives. If you find these conversations helpful, please give us a like, subscribe so that you can follow more people, because there are many more people coming down the pipe with just amazing bits of wisdom about what love means to them and how we can all have more of it in our lives. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Love Launch Podcast.